Hello, Amber.
Hi.
I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you. Let's see. I'm going to get myself up here as well. We're just letting these women trickle in. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Doing well. I mean, it's been a good start to the week. It already feels like, we've lived a week already, but it's all good. First of all, I hear you're from South Louisiana or from Louisiana. I don't know how far south it is. I guess
Oh,
Louisiana.
I'm about as far south as you can get without um becoming one with the hurricanes.
So I graduated from South Lafourche. So
Okay. I'm on
um
the other side of the state, so I'm southwest.
okay, nice. So I've always said I don't know how further south I could get because people would always say, well, where are you from? I was an hour southeast of New Orleans. They were like, I didn't think there was anything further south than New Orleans. Yep, there is.
You're with the majority of people. We
Absolutely,
like to stay
absolutely.
secret, huh?
All right. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for being here tonight and sharing all the wealth of knowledge that you have with these wonderful, amazing Apogee women. But just tell us a little bit about yourself, because I don't like to read bios. I like for the people that come on these calls just to tell us about you, and we'll ask you questions.
Well, awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This looks like an amazing group of women, so I love to be in this same room as y'all. I am a single mom to three kids, and I homeschool them, and I am an entrepreneur. So I have my own brand where I teach about self-reliance and resilience and empowerment for women and oftentimes families too. So sometimes I have dads come across as well, and to younger children. And it's just a way that I was raised and my parents raised me. And during COVID, I saw that there was a really big need for people to grasp what they were capable of once again, rather than to feed into the fear-based mindsets. And so that's kind of where my brand took a turn. I have a baccalaureate in nursing, so that's what my education was in. And I initially loved talking about natural alternatives for wellness and boosting our immune system from home, because everybody started to panic, right? About, well, what if I can't find these certain supplements? Or what if access to healthcare is impaired? Or because I can't go get healthcare at my basic emergency room um, or urgent care if I don't get the vaccination. And so, what does that look like for me? Like, am I equipped to deal with my life and my health on the other side of it? So, that's kind of where I started deep diving in 2020. And women were just so curious for that information and even more. So, it expanded into self defense and self reliance in every genre, including homeschool. So, I've worked with some great companies over the year. I worked with Fieldcraft for um, almost 5 years. So I just ended that relationship at the end of 2024. And now I am more just an independent entrepreneur, which is really fun for me to be able to create courses and curriculum around this for women and families. So that's kind of a lot. Like there's a lot happening, right? But it all it all goes together, I think.
Absolutely. So, was there a turning point for you that got you into, the pursuit of this survival type atmosphere, or was it just how you were raised?
I think it was primarily how I was raised. I really didn't realize that that is not how the rest of society operated as a whole. I grew up in rural South Louisiana, where growing up there as well, most people are pretty resilient and self-reliant. Or the people that we associated with were, right? People that were family, cousins, people in our community, people that we went to church with, everybody had their own facets of preparedness and self-reliance that they were the experts in, I guess, per se. And then we would all help each other. And it was definitely always a grassroots effort to survive any sort of natural disaster, which wasn't a this may happen one day type of
Yep.
situation we prepared for, right? It was something that we knew every few years we would live through some sort of catastrophic event, whether that was flooding or a hurricane. And so we all just were ready and prepared. And I guess my parents just took that to the next level, not not in a tinfoil way, just um really wanting us to never have to depend on anybody else to the extent that we could. So, and my parents never also allowed me to believe that I was incapable of anything simply because I was a girl. I live in an area of the country where traditional gender roles are still very much a thing. And so they definitely expect me to be a lady and do all of the ladylike things, but there was nothing that my dad didn't also teach me. He wasn't all setting the care of my vehicle to say, a man will take care of that for you one day. He very much was like, you will you will act like a lady, but you also get out here and check your tires with me. Like there was nothing we weren't covering. And once I got to college, and I had a bit of a culture shock because I graduated in a class of 28,
Oh,
very
wow.
small school. And then I went off to college, and that was wild to me. I had never gone to school or had a conversations with people who weren't also raised in a rural setting. Like that was so new to me to meet people who had lived in an urban area, and all of what my life uh, consisted of was very foreign to them. So I noticed I was in a sorority and then I was in nursing school. So it was always a tight-knit group of people that I was doing life with in college. It wasn't ever like just this giant university experience. I kind of stayed in these little silos. But I would notice how unprepared my friends were. That's actually where I coined the term designated defender. And I would be like, I will be your designated defender for tonight. Like, I will be the one who's making sure none of you have a roofie slipped into your drink or end up in a very dangerous and precarious situation. So I just noticed how unprepared my friends were. I was the one changing tires at the sorority house and cutting grass and teaching my friends how to do whatever it was they needed to do. So I think once I reached adult life is where that turning point happened, where I realized that, okay, these are easy concepts. They're not foreign, and we can still be women and be feminine or whatever it is we want to be and still be very independent and very capable. And then entering motherhood took a whole new turn because once I had kids, I definitely wanted to be as independent and self-reliant as I could health wise. So that's where I kind of followed that unraveling thread in the health department and being more holistic, making those choices. Um, and then when COVID hit, that's when everything kind of turned on its head. And I realized that really simple health practices, teaching people how to do CPR and how to do abdominal thrusts, aka the Heimlich maneuver, and just teaching people that they don't have to have certifications to be experts in their own home. That's where that really flipped. So I guess I kind of have found different big pivot points and stepping stones just all along the way in adulthood. Truly. Just once I had more life experience and was exposed, I think, to larger demographics of people where I realized what could be helpful.
I love, first of all, if you can get a group of Cajuns together, I think we could solve all of the world's problems. I often laugh, a hurricane is blowing into the Gulf, and your neighborhood comes together like no other neighborhood in the world. That is definitely a culture that I grew up with, and like you said, everybody will pitch in their survival, whatever they're good at is what they bring to the table, and it's a whole culture is what I like to talk about. But um when I think about, like, I'm raising, I have 5 children, right? And 4 of them are in college at this point, and 3 of them are girls, and they're away from the house, and away it we didn't want to raise girls that were dependent on their husbands to do things for them or dad to do them things for them. We definitely raised our girls, and raising our sons to be self-reliant too. That's one of the months inside of Apogee is Operation Self-Reliance. And a few of the things I think we can question, like, why would I ever need to insert that particular thing? Well, I am of like this mind of, if I can prepare for it ahead of time, when it actually happens, then I have a little bit of knowledge around it, that it's not like I'm being hit blindly in the face with it. But what would you say is probably the most underrated skill that everyone should learn?
Oh, goodness. The most underrated skill. I think situational awareness is probably the easiest one because it doesn't really require any tools. I could talk about communication, but then we have to get into GMRS radios and repeaters and antennas, and that becomes a whole large, overwhelming conversation. But most often, we can avoid a potentially threatening situation that would knock us on our off of our feet
Mhm.
simply by being aware and noticing the signs. But not only the reason I love situational awareness too is not only does it make us safer, but it makes us more empathetic humans. It's been the easiest survival skill for me to teach my kids while also teaching them to have a deeper understanding and respect for humanity. And it also allows us to practice the application of mindfulness, which makes us more grateful people, more peaceful people. And that in and of itself allows us to have lower cortisol levels and to just be happier humans, which is kind of the point, right? We're trying to create security and we're trying to create stability for ourselves through these acts of self-reliance and survival and preparedness. But if we're not careful, we get sucked into a scarcity mindset with that, and then there is this perpetuation of fear and anxiousness, and we create um anxiousness when we don't have to, right? We create fears that aren't actually existing in our environment at the time rather than just being ready and prepared for them. So I find situational awareness allows us to be safe, be aware of our surroundings, be more understanding of humanity, but then also to be more mindful, more grounded, and less anxious. It kind of like it goes full circle. So I think it's totally undervalued because of all of the different facets it serves for us.
I like the bit about humanity. I don't think I ever looked at it with that piece of it. Um, but I think the situational awareness, we don't think enough about that, because we're so distracted. We're distracted by these things constantly, right? We roll up at the grocery store. This happened to me the other day. I roll up at Walmart and I stop my vehicle and I coach all of these amazing women. So I've always got like ping, 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 ping. So I'm like, okay, what can I handle prior to going into the grocery store? And I'm not paying attention to anything that's happening around me. I look up, I'm actually opening my door, and there's a man standing at my car. Hurried up and closed the door, locked it, and I'm like, I said, what do you want? And that's nerve wracking to me because it's like I know that and it's broad daylight and I parked far because the store is packed. And I think that that's one of the biggest things we don't think about quite often is being that aware because I didn't know what he wanted. In the moment I was like, hey, and not to be ugly and aggressive, I just said, I need you to back away from the vehicle. What do you need? And
Hmm.
he was looking for money, and I didn't mind giving him something, but then also I was like, I'm all the way in the back of, you know, who else is around? And
Hmm.
once I saw other people getting out of their vehicles was when I decided to get out of my vehicle. But talk to us in terms of how can we be more aware in situations because of the distractions, because we have kids that are cutting up in the back seat or doing whatever when we go to certain places.
I think even outside of preparedness, we need to be aware simply for our sanity and the grounding effect that it has on us. Because if not, we get really caught up from moving through one task to the next task. We get focus locked on our devices or whatever it is that is on our mind at that point in time, stressing us out. And so, even just to allow us to fully embrace the day and to be more present in our daily life, we have to take the opportunity in those moments where we are transitioning from a place where we are less vulnerable to a place where we're more vulnerable, like in a parking lot, right? You're exiting the safety and security of your vehicle and entering into higher traffic areas. There's a lot of vehicles. There could be low light, there could be people moving in and out, backing up, moving forward, people not paying attention, and that, they could hit you with their vehicle. It may not even be a nefarious person, just somebody else who's in a focus lock, and you also aren't paying attention. So then you become a casualty of that. But just giving us a second, it's not going to make you late. Giving yourself 20 seconds to stop. If 20 seconds makes you late, you were already late. So just let it go. But giving yourself 20 seconds, whatever it takes for you to reground, if you have kids in the car, tell them hey guys, we're about to move through the parking lot. Is everybody good? Like, does anybody have anything they need to talk about before we get out of the car? I find that even that helps my kids to feel more connected to me. And not saying, do you have anything you want to talk about security wise?
Yeah.
Like, was I distracted while I was driving and I missed something that you're trying to say? Like, do you need me for a moment? We're at the store. We're gonna run in. I'm gonna grab a few things. Does anybody need anything while we're here? All right, we're walking through the parking lot. Like everybody remember, be eyes up, buttercup. We're gonna get in the store and grab our stuff, and then we can go. That also alleviates a lot of the stress of your kids being like, how many groceries are we getting? How long are we gonna be in here? And you're overwhelmed and you're thinking through things. So you're like, everybody just stop. I have to get groceries. Like, what's the problem? Just you're along for the ride. Like, get over asking all these questions and just get with the program. All of that's alleviated when we take a 20-second pause, right? And it
Yeah.
also regrounds us to that moment. One of my favorite examples of teaching children through situational awareness about humanity, we were at a park, and I always teach them just paying attention to their surroundings. Not that there's always something there that's threatening, but let's allow our senses to alert us to what's going on around us. It might be, we might smell jasmine, and we love jasmine. So when we smell jasmine, we can all stop and be like, wait, where's the jasmine? Like there's fun things that our senses alert us to as well. Heightened voices are something that we pay attention to. We don't just ignore that and then get caught in the middle of an uprising situation of conflict that we don't want to be caught in. So voices were elevated. I was able to use our code word to where my kids could come to me. And as we safely exited the park and got away from the situation, I was able to explain to the kids, like, you guys heard those heightened voices, that person is they're having a bad day, probably. No telling what's going on. Their life may be falling apart today, and this is the best that they could figure out how to do to deal with it. Now, that doesn't make it okay. That doesn't make their response okay. They may choose to do something really bad today, but we're not going to be there in the middle of it. But also, like, I feel really sorry for the people involved in this situation. And it wasn't a scenario where somebody needed protection, right? This was just two people yelling. That would have been a whole different situation if somebody was threatening a child or about to cause harm to somebody. But I was able to walk them through that. Or if we're at a grocery store and we're walking through the checkout, instead of us being distracted, if the person checking us out is snippy or short with us, I could tell the kids once we got out of the store, and I may address that person and say, I hope you have a good day or something, make eye contact with them. But once we get out of the store, I'll say, did you notice anything about the person that checked us out? And because we'll be like, yeah, she was rude. Like, oh, you know what? She may have had a lot of people be really rude to her today. Did anybody recall what her name was? Like, well, yeah, her name was Ruth because you said, hi, Ruth. Like, how awkward, mom. I'm like, no, I am addressing her as a human being. And maybe she needed somebody to be kind to her that day. Like, that took a second of our time. I taught you guys to pay attention to your surroundings. And also, maybe that had a positive effect on her. We don't know, and I mean, if it does or it didn't, it doesn't. That's not something we're going to hyper focus on as we move through the rest of our day. But all it took was intention, and all it took was me paying attention to her instead of being distracted by everything else. That in teaching them people's emotions makes them more empathetic, but it also in a high risk situation where somebody is a threat, they can better read someone's emotions. Think about our daughters when they grow up and they start dating, or they're around people and trying to decide if this is a person that they should go on a date with, or even our sons being around women. When they're able to be more empathetic and read people's emotions, they can avoid situations better than the average person could because they're better able to read human emotion. And then they've had so much experience with it that they can trust their judgment instead of being like, oh, something feels off, but I'm not sure what. They've been practicing this practice per se since they were children. So they will have a lot more experience pointing to the fact that, yes, you can trust the way that you're feeling because this is how it always played out in the past. So it gets like really woo woo and way off into the clouds when we talk about it that way. But don't we want the things we're doing in preparedness and self-reliance to play into so much more than just survival? Because then it makes it so much easier. It gives it so much more value and it makes so much more sense and it's so much more relevant, you know?
I don't think it's woo-woo at all. I think it's slowing down and being a human to another human. And I think oftentimes we are so distracted, even in that checkout line, right? That we're just hurry up on to the next thing. This is taking too long, that we don't interact with the person that's doing a service for us, even though they're getting paid. Because I think, and that's something I've taught my children to interact with the people who are around you, you know, because who knows, maybe one day you'll have that particular job and there's somebody that's kind that walked through this. But I like the aspect of getting to feel people out and getting to feel people's emotions, not only in when we need them in a heightened sense, but just in a day-to-day general setting. I think that's awesome.
I could give all of you a one-page PDF on how to build a fire or how to purify water, and you could read the steps and you could do it. It's very technical. You all you have to do is follow steps. It's like when I was in nursing school, it's like starting an IV. We could teach a monkey to start an IV. There, it involves no critical think. Well, okay, there are aspects that involve critical thinking sometimes, but when we're thinking about the technical parts of things, they're step-by-step procedures. And once you see it and then you do it and you learn it and you practice it, it's doable. It requires tools and supplies, right? And investment of these things. With situational awareness and just paying attention to humanity and being grounded in our surroundings and in our current, whether it's our current season of life or just that immediate environment we're in, that's the hardest part. And that's the part that people skip because it takes intentionality and you have to have a desire to care about it and not just try to be like a tactical baddie, you know, who's like, well, look, I can start a fire. Like, well, yeah, but can you avoid a potentially dangerous situation simply by paying attention? It requires nothing except your eyes and your brain and focus and intention. But it's the hardest part for people, but it's the part where the absolute most benefit shows up and the most fruit shows up in your life.
That's so wise. All right, we have a question from Peggy and Sam. Let me go ahead and spotlight you guys.
I see, Peggy, I recognize you.
I'm so excited you're here.
Here.
Thank you for coming on and talking with us. You're such a wealth of knowledge. So I'm just so glad you can share with all these wonderful women.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, we have 4, 5, 6-year-olds that we take up and down Redwood Road, which is really busy here in Salt Lake, as you might know. And we've tried to teach them situational awareness and just, knowing where they are for like the older kids. Any suggestions or advice as to what we could do with like the littler ones, just so that they become more knowledgeable and they're not just kind of wandering and, looking at the sky and stuff like that? Any games or anything?
Yeah. So are you wanting them to be more aware of where you're at specifically geographically, like road names, or are you just wanting them to be more present in where they're in that exact walk, just like present here, paying attention to their surroundings?
I would say both, because we have leaders here on campus from like 4 years old all the way up to 12-year-olds. So we're a wide range and, so different seasons of each of their lives. The two of us have them walking alongside us, but if there's any tips or tricks to just, the older ones, like one of us could guide them for geographic information, and the younger ones, we could be pointing out, I don't know, pieces just.
So I love scavenger hunts with kids that age. And so it might be more complicated for them to pay attention to a scavenger hunt page while they're walking too, like trying to decipher what they're looking for. So maybe you set like really small parameters and there's like two specific things they're looking for while they're on that scavenger hunt. And it's things that, I mean, it could be variables too. It could be colors so that they'd be seeing it in a variety of places. Or it could be something that they're going to interact on that trail. And so their job during that transitional walk is looking for those specific items. I also find that, which I'm sure you do a lot of, when the children are doing the leadership aspect, they're so much more prone to pay attention and follow the directions. So maybe and you probably would need more than one, because if one was paying attention and they were trying to help, keep the other ones in line, that probably wouldn't work that well. But if you have like a group of leaders who are in charge of the leadership role that day of getting them safely from point A to point B, and that can kind of be like the mission. Like we will have walk leaders and their mission is to get everybody safely from this place to this place. And so you have to be paying attention to what's going on around you to make sure, that there's no dogs or anything that could harm anybody as we're walking. But also when you see somebody who's like not paying attention, or they're kind of in a daze, you have to tell them. And maybe there's something that you say like, eyes up, buttercup. That's what I use with my kids. Like maybe you guys have a code word for like, hey, pay attention, or you focus, and they have to like use that as a call to action to their little peers and kind of pull them back into line. But maybe letting a group of them have that authority and leadership will kind of get them all involved in the mission per se.
I love it. Those words are really fun too, like mission and stuff like that.
I
They
have
love
five,
that.
and I all I want is for someone to come take me on a mission. Like on a weekly basis, it's always in on my bingo card is I really hope somebody shows up and takes me on a mission. It is yet to happen.
You still have time. It could happen.
Maybe I'll ask somebody to do that for my birthday next year. I'll tell my friends, I'll be like, can we go on a mission for my birthday? You guys plan one of those for me?
That's a great idea. Thank you so much, Amber. I appreciate it. Great advice.
Good one. All right, Lydia.
Hi. So my question is kind of how you become more comfortable, I guess, being prepared, like conceal and carry, or just what is like your first step? I just always am like nervous. I don't know the rules around things. That specifically is like super rule based. So I'm always like, it's better to just not do it because I don't want to, do something that's could, put me in a bad position. So how do
That's
you kind of
normal.
navigate that and feel comfortable with it?
So very, very normal. And I believe everybody who wasn't raised around that sort of lifestyle, that's always their first feeling. So just know that you're in good company. That's the segue to getting started. Knowledge is always going to be what gets you to the other side of those trepidatious feelings or that hesitation. So we will always fear what we don't know and understand. And the overwhelmed mind will always say, no, like you said, there's just too much information. No, it's easier not to do it. The law was written for citizens to follow. So there are ways for us to break it down in a way that is very digestible. And I have great resources for that, where you can go look up your specific state and kind of see what those laws entail, what you're allowed to do. But when it comes to concealed carrying or carrying any sort of weapons, like even a knife, even pepper spray, moms can be hesitant about because they're just not sure operatively how they work, or even if the children were to accidentally have access to them, how they would mitigate that incident that would happen with that. And so it is just having an understanding about how all of the items work, how you would keep them on your person or safely away from kids, right? Because it does require a different level of responsibility. So you're not going to carry weapons and then leave your purse in the same place that you leave your purse now. You will have to take heightened precautions and your life has to change, but you have to go through the methodical steps of, okay, step by step, where am I going to put the purse when I'm in my car? Will I ever be able to step out of my car and leave my purse in the car if it has a weapon in it? How am I going to teach my children about how to be safe from the developmentally early ages, how to be respectful of weaponry and how to be around it and what to do if they encounter a firearm? And then when you're ready to move to those stages of concealed carrying, that has to start with you being comfortable with a firearm and practicing with an unloaded gun, practicing loading and unloading it. Practice drawing that firearm, because if we are concealing it in a purse, that's going to require different steps than if it were on our person. We have to unzip that purse. We have to access that purse, right? If our purses are really messy, that means that we have to create a discipline of being more organized and keeping our purse organized so that we know exactly where that firearm is in our purse. So it does require different levels of discipline, but we're all grown-ups. We're all the way grown up. So we can all do it. I think it's just a lot of times people don't want to adapt to that discipline, right? And so they don't. And then one day they have a situation where they really regret that they didn't. But it happens to us all in different stages too. So if you still feel wholly uncomfortable about, let's say, for example, a gun, it's not time for you to use a gun then. If you still feel uncomfortable, it's not time. You will feel that continued urge to learn and get more comfortable when it is time for you. But allow yourself to be curious and understand too that there's different stages to that, to getting comfortable. You may begin by being comfortable with pepper spray, and then you may move to a taser. Then you may move to There's a company I love called Birna, and they have a pepper gun. And so, I mean, this will knock a person out. This will actually penetrate the skin, but they have like pepper versions of it. So it penetrates the skin and it also releases a pepper spray, but it's a less lethal form of self-defense. It's not a lethal weapon. I mean, it can be if you use it in the right place, right? Anything can really be a lethal weapon, but we move through stages of what feels good to us. And then it can happen fast because the more you educate yourself and the more comfortable you get, and the more disciplined you are to make it a practice, the more you can fluidly move through those stages to evolve and to move from that place of, I don't know, I have a lack of knowledge, to, okay, I understand. And now I am building comfort because of that understanding. But the fear will always come just from a lack of knowing. And so knowledge is what's going to move you from that point A to that point B. And there's resources abundant for whatever it is you're seeking. You just have to find the one that is relevant for you in this stage of your life, in this moment.
I love
Can
that.
I just add
Thank
something
you.
to that?
Yes, the voice of God, whoever's speaking.
Hi, my name is Tegan, and I was
Period.
a self-defense instructor for a number of years. And I would say that if you are going to carry a weapon, make sure you know how to use it before you have it on your person. Because if you don't know how to use that weapon, it can be taken away from you and used against you. So just make sure you are extremely comfortable with that weapon before you ever consider using it in your self-defense. So.
Always, absolutely. Application is an incredibly necessary part of knowledge.
Love it. All right, Britt.
Hey Amber, thanks for being on with us. I was just I was looking at your website before we hopped on, and it looks like you have a lot of offerings. And I'm just curious what your favorite thing, like what if you had to pick one thing that you had to focus on for your business for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh gosh. I mean, I have such a heart for kids. So I love training women. And now that I am completely independent, you will see a lot more resources come out in the next year and beyond, especially for women, like women's self-defense, like talking about concealed carry from a very feminine standpoint, and then what our less lethal options are, and how would be best to conceal carry in dresses, and how, what do we follow when we're conceal carrying off body, like what roles how does that change? But I really think if I had to focus on anything for the rest of my life, it would be educating children, and it would be unit studies on teaching children. I mean, I have a course right now on public safety for kids, teaching them financial independence, teaching them so much American history from an as actual factual historical standpoint, and just preparing them for the world. Like that is what lights me up and what I love to spend my days doing. So I think it would definitely be just hyper focusing on kids and how to make really awesome and well-rounded adults.
Hmm.
That's great. Thank you. Can I ask what do you like to utilize as material for you said you like to share history with them. What's your material of choice for that?
So I compile a lot of different resources depending on what we're studying. I have a history curriculum right now that I really do like from Memoria Press. And so it's more of a classical history, which I really love most classical histories. We did classical conversations for years. The Good and the Beautiful had a good history program, but they kind of discontinued it because they're enhancing it, I guess is the best word for it. So I'm curious to see what that looks like when it comes out in the future. But I really love to just hit on bullet points with them. So like primary events, studying primary events, using a timeline. And then I love to break out in read alouds and to find other books that come along and supplement that information, and to just help them deep dive into those smaller parts of history to make it definitely more living and breathing for them than it would be if I just went through a history book. So it's not very helpful because it comes from a multitude of places instead of me just being able to point to one resource, but it's what has worked for us really well. Like right now, the inauguration is going to be taking place next week. So I have a unit study from Beautiful Feet books, which they do great micro unit studies. And so I am loving that. And I can't wait to walk them through that this week and then leading up into Monday. And that is an example of like they will understand an inauguration better than most adults in America simply from us spending a little bit of time every day in a week leading up to it so that they have context to understand what they're seeing come Monday and then they can actually watch that inauguration. And that in and of itself is they're never going to forget that, right? And it only happens every 4 years, but they're going to get a refresher in 4 years from now. And so those are just little examples of what intention and focus can really do when we are just being very careful about how we walk children through such important points.
Love it. Thank you.
We're creating well-rounded individuals. I love that. I love that. All right, let's go with Lindsay.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I also looked at your website a little bit ahead of time too, and something that you said earlier really caught my attention, and something I've been thinking about is safe word with kids. How do you choose that word, and how do you kind of introduce it and make sure that it's being used appropriately, like within your family and things? And then, is there a time that you need to change that safe word?
Yeah, that's great questions. So it depends on the ages of your children, and it's totally normal if you come up with a safe word or a code word or a pro word, whatever you want to call it, and your kids use it playfully, especially if they're younger. You might catch them playing with each other and using the word or thinking it's funny. That's totally normal. It doesn't mean that your kids are like the most unprepared and unsafe kids on the planet. It just means they're being kids and they're experimenting with something that you deemed a valuable word, and so they want to use it and kind of see like what values attached to it, right? What reaction do I get? So I just had to make sure that I reinstilled this is our safe word. You know, we use this only when we need to be safe and for mom to help protect you, or you to let me know that there's something there that you feel like you need protection from, or for you to tell me you're uncomfortable without saying you're uncomfortable, or for mom to say the word to you, or dad to say the word to you, whoever may be using it, to let you know that there's something that we see in our environment that we are trying to keep you safe from. So that was just a reinstilled concept. So as with anything, any practice, gun safety, teaching our children situational awareness, teaching our children code words, it is a concept that has to be revisited repeatedly. And you have to get it on the calendar and you have to make it a priority, because it's just like reproductive education, right? We don't want to be talked to. We didn't want to be talked to about that one time when we were kids because it left us with so many questions and confusion. And it's the same with our kids. Like, you can't talk about something like this one time and then be like, okay, we're good, be well, like go off into the world. And so it's the same with this code word and this concept. You're going to have to teach it repeatedly to reinstill this so that they have understanding. Role playing is ideal for this, just to teach them how they would use it. And you can do this safely at home in the beginning until they really grasp the hang of it. But my advice to you is that it's really hard for us to predict what each scenario might look like in real life when we need to use the word. And so I didn't want to over inundate the kids or confuse them. And so I simply said, when mom uses this word, your job is to not ask questions and to listen to what my next advice is or my next orders are to you. Because those orders might be get in the car, they might be follow me, they might be go in this room. It depends on where you're at and depends on what's happening, right? But I had 3 little ones, and so they all also had respective jobs. Whenever mom says this word, my oldest knew her job was to grab the hand of the youngest, and my middle child was to come meet me because we were kind of like buddying up. And then usually it was to get behind me, like get behind mom, because we naturally are going to get between our children and whatever threat is present. But sometimes it might be code word, everybody get in the vehicle as fast as you can. Then they know, because kids have a propensity to say like, what's going on? What do you see? And they know if I use the word, you do not ask questions. I'll explain it all to you in detail later. But in this moment, your job is to not ask questions and to do whatever I say next. And so we would practice and we'd come up with with fake scenarios at home, and I started with fun things. So it might have been something threatening, like a dog that looked scary at a park, like we're at a park, we're playing, and I'm going to use the code word, but it's because I see a dog that's really scary. I didn't start with things that made them terrified, like there's somebody that wants to kidnap you potentially, or an active shooter. Like we didn't go into that scenario immediately. So then once they got the hang of it, and I would let them use, it's kind of like a curse word. I'd be like, okay, you can use the word as many times as you want right now, but then after this moment, we're not going to say it again, right? But anytime they'd say, can I say the word? I'd be like, yes, you can say the word. And then they'd say it to me, but they knew we weren't using that word. We weren't telling our friends. Really important people in our life that I deemed as safe would know the word. If somebody was, the nanny or babysitting them or whatever, then we would use those words with them. Then once they got a little older, I would start practicing with them out in public. So, but I would tell them, I'd say, I'm going to practice using our code word today at some point in time, just so they weren't completely caught off guard. And so we might have been in the parking lot at Target, and I would say the word, and then I'd say, get in the car as fast as you can. So they'd immediately get like little ducks in line behind me. And sometimes maybe somebody would ask a question, and then they'd all be like, there's no such questions, like they were correcting each other. And then we'd get a treat, we'd go get popcorn, or we get an ice cream or something to celebrate. And so I was always just trying to use positivity and encouragement so that they'd be excited and that they felt like, okay, this is a really empowering thing. Like we have this word. And then once they're a lot older now, I will surprise them with role playing or practice scenarios where I don't warn them ahead of time. And I've had to use it in real life. So I will pretend like it's a real life scenario, and then I will either tell them afterwards, like, okay, this was legitimate or it wasn't legitimate. They have also used the word before with me when they felt uncomfortable. And so I know when they say the word that my responsibility is to listen to what they say next. So it's kind of like we're giving respect on both sides. So they love the word. It makes them feel really encouraged and really safe. It could also be a sentence if you're having trouble with a word. And so it could be something that makes sense in normal life to other people, but it makes absolutely no sense to your family. So you could say something like, hey, we have to go feed our dog Rex. I mean, it's kind of a long sentence for a high stress scenario, but you probably don't have a dog named Rex. Or I would say use something you don't have at all. Like we have to get home and feed our bird, like something like that. Or Aunt Pat's calling. Well, there's no Aunt Pat, but I would use Aunt Frizzle, like something that would really grasp their attention to where you don't have that moment for them to be like, do we have an Aunt Pat? Who's an Aunt Pat? But also, if you're repeatedly having these conversations with them and doing drills, maybe put on your calendar for like the first day of every month. You guys have a 5-minute discussion about your code word, and you do a 1-minute drill. It's when I say repeated, I don't want you to think I have so much to do already. That's really overwhelming. 5 minutes, one day a month, once a month. Like that's not that hard. But then that's 12 times a year. You've practiced it. Like they're going to remember what your code word is when you've repeated it that much. And they'll get excited when you're like, okay, we're going to practice our code word. Now, do you ever have to change it? I would only change it if it's proving to be a really difficult word or you don't like it. We've had the same code word for 7 years now. Or if somebody in your life goes from being a safe person to an unsafe person and you need to change that word because they're no longer safe. Maybe you had a babysitter that lost your trust. And so now you don't want them to have that much access to your kids. Mine are old enough. Once they got old enough, I had 2 code words. So I had our primary code word and then I'd have a backup code word. The babysitters only got the backup code word. So, it was like the nuclear codes. Like I was maintaining that one. They weren't getting access to that. So it just is what works for your family.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to do this now. And you've given me like such tangible tools to do it, which is amazing. Thank you.
So much easier than you think it is. Absolutely don't be overwhelmed by that. It's just like once you start, it's just going to flow. And let your kids lead the conversation because they're so much more resilient than we give them credit for, truly.
Absolutely, they are. All right, Miss Sam.
Hi, Amber. I was so excited when I saw that you were a mentor for today, so thank you for being here. My question for you is, because I am still trying to train myself that, because I didn't grow up in the household where it was like, you're capable young women, like you can do this stuff. It was oh, someone will take care of you mindset, right? And so like as an adult now, I'm trying to like trust myself in that process. And so I'm hoping for some advice on like how to change the narrative for like the young girls that I work with. Like what's some like a lesson or something that like your dad told you or your family told you, like something to like just reinforce to them that they are capable. An example is like we're practicing like politeness in our studio. So like having the gentleman hold the doors open for the girls, right? And so I'm trying to find the balance of like you're capable of holding the door open for yourself very much, but it's also like still polite to like be that lady, you know? So I'm like, how do we encourage the girls to kind of have the mindset that you were taught growing up?
Great question.
That is a good question. And I feel like that is a fine line because you're almost, especially at those young ages, you're like the pendulum swinging heavy to independence to teach them independence. And then it's almost swinging heavy back to chivalry to teach them chivalry. I think the best lesson my parents could have given me was that no one owes us anything, right? And so we have to see everything through a lens of gratitude. Because if we feel owed, then we always we're always going to feel a lack because most people aren't going to measure up to what they owe us, right? And our definition of what we're owed is going to vary from someone's definition about what they owe us. And people were raised in many different lifestyles and in many different environments. So what we may see as rude, if we create that as a standard, not that standards are bad, and we'll get to that in a second, but if we create that as a standard, then someone may fall short without meaning to fall short, right? Obviously, there's standards that we should have that are just ethical, moral, high standards. But sometimes there's just a mismatch of what we've been taught. So I think being able to see everything through a lens of gratitude and then also knowing what standards I was allowed to hold when it came to how I was going to be treated by men or by the opposite sex allowed me to maintain what I wanted in a partner or what I wanted in somebody that I was going to be in close contact with, but to also know that seeing everything through a lens of gratitude allows me to still maintain that balance to where there's not always a constant lack of somebody not meeting the mark, right? And then communicating my expectations to a person that I'm in an exchange with, if communication should be given, because if somebody's opening the door for me at a gas station, I'm not going to like sit there and have a conversation with the gentleman about what my level of expectation is, right? And what my standards are. Like he's either going to hold it or he's not going to hold it. So seeing things through the lens of gratitude allowed me to still understand like I am capable and the world may not always meet my standards. I'll be grateful when they do. And I'll allow that to be done. I'll allow the door to be open for me. I will allow a man to fix my tire if he's there, because like I would love to not have to fix my tire. I mean, I can do it, but I'd like to not do it, right? But to just be able to be grateful, but still capable. And to be able to also not need that hyper independence. So my parents also, and this may be what you're looking for, more along the lines of what you're looking for. But my mom especially was really good about making sure that I never tied my value, like my identity, up into what it was that I was capable of doing. Like those were my capabilities. Those weren't my character. Like that's not where my identity lied. So I didn't have to lean into hyper independence. I think I probably come off as hyper independent on the internet, but I don't feel that way in my normal life. Like if my dad shows up to help me with something, I'll say thank you, you know?
Mhm.
If it's somebody in my life that does something for me but expects there's like a manipulation to it, like they expect something in return, I think that's where my hyper independence might come out, because I'd rather handle something than you think that I owe you something for your generosity in exchange, right? It's not like I don't want this to be a form of currency per se. And so being able to not wrap my identity up in my independence and allow that to be, that's part of my capabilities, not part of my character, but what I set as my threshold for what I am allowed to want people to do for me, and like where my boundaries are and where my expectations are, like those can be more character shaping, whereas our independence doesn't have to be. That's our capabilities. That makes sense.
Yes,
Such a
I love
question.
it. And Peggy and I are going to try to come to one of your your retreats. Is that what you
Yes.
call them? We're gonna try to come sometime. So hopefully one of these days we get to meet you in person. But thank you. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's the just because I can doesn't mean I want to all the time. So yes, I'll definitely accept the help of another human being and being proud of knowing that I'm fully capable of stringing a weed eater if that's what I need to do. But sometimes I just don't want to do it, you know?
I don't want to.
I don't want to. All right, Katie.
Hi, Amber. Thank you so much for doing this with us. I've been following you for a while now, so I love your content and you're super inspirational. So my question might not be for everyone, but it's okay. I am opening an Apogee campus in August, and one of my biggest concerns that I can't seem to get peace about is security. And like, I feel like I'm in this protector space. I'm going to be in this protector. It's okay. It's okay. For like a period of time with these kids. And I'm just wondering if you have any insight or input, being a woman and being in that space, like any tips for keeping everyone secure, safe.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
So I think when we zoom out and we look at the big picture, we see a lot of kids, and then we see the world, and we see vulnerability, and we see threats. And so then we feel very responsible for all those tiny little lives. But what you need to do is come lower and think about what exactly are you the most fearful of, or what exactly is your prime vulnerabilities. And so that may be as simple as saying, okay, here's the facility we're in. Let me draw this out. Where are my vulnerability points? You know, how many doors or exits or entrance points are there? Okay, that's where your vulnerable spaces are. You know, okay, now how can I address this vulnerable space? Because you yourself can't be posted at every door all day, every day, right? So what's useful for you? Do you have a way to barricade that door if something were to happen? Those are simple things you can invest in that you can use to lock big school doors. Okay. There are like body armor companies that sell body armor for schools that are, you know, $1,200. So what fundraiser do I need to start running now, or try to find donors and sponsors so that I can invest in this armor so that, hey, if that door was breached, and that takes us to like next level fear level, right? I have this that I can put the kids behind while I am then defending life. And then I'm moving towards using these tools. Now, am I comfortable with a firearm? How am I going to conceal that every day? If I'm not comfortable with a firearm, then what's my less lethal self-defense options? Where can I store that? Let me start thinking about biometric safes I can have in place that are staged in the school, or I have weapons, or am I going to have a rotation of parents that are going to help me where they can be there once a week, or if there's, you know, higher traffic events, or even maybe you just want parents there during drop off when kids are outside of the school coming in and out, or I don't know what your specific scenario looks like, but coming down and getting like, you're at a vantage point, right? You're doing Overwatch now. Come down and get more in the gritty details of what is it you fear specifically, because your vulnerabilities are going to be different than Peggy's vulnerabilities, and they're going to be different than everybody else's vulnerabilities. So you have to figure out what your specific school's vulnerable points are, and then find ways to mitigate that and have those done in advance, because right now is a luxury. Right now is a preparatory stage for you, and that is a point of luxury. So take advantage of that. Do what you need to do to get prepared in those aspects so it can stop taking up space in your brain.
Sorry, thank you so much. That was a huge, huge wealth of information. And I literally didn't look at anything like that. So I feel so much better right now just with those ideas. Thank you.
Sitting down and writing it down. And, you know, like I said, even draw a picture of the place that you're going to be and be like, okay, I forgot this door was there. You know, like what's the way that I can keep this area safer? It may even be like door wedges that you get.
Yeah.
You know, it's where if the door's opened, an alarm goes off. So at least nobody's getting in without you knowing. And it just, but it just brain to paper, like just start writing down and it'll flow. And you have time. You have so much time.
Exactly.
Like, you're good. Like you've got.
I never even thought of, or like barricading, like different tools never even came to mind, because we have a lot of doors. So that's a huge relief to even think of just applying that.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
All right, Kelly.
All right. Hello, Amber.
Kelly?
So my question's a little similar to that, but it's like bringing it down. I lead a homeschooling group and we are out in nature all the time. State parks, we're in Middle Tennessee. So the logistical challenge I have is in summertime when it's hot and we are in water. I'm always carrying on myself and I've figured it out in wintertime, but that summer is tricky for me. Either concealing it on my body because sometimes it's just like swimsuits, or in the bags I have, but then I'm like the defender of the water. So I'm always watching kids and like last minute having to like, jump in a creek to get a kid. So do you have any tips?
So the best advice I have is like what I've done when we go to the beach is because I don't want to not have my weapon with me.
Yeah.
I carry a life pod by Voltec. They're like this big. That's not, you can't see me.
Yeah.
Big.
It's big enough for your weapon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so I put my EDC in there and it's like a code. So there's different little vaults like that. I trust my kids around my bag, but like, okay, if we sit down and look through that scenario, there's other little kids with me usually on a beach. They're going to go to my bag to get snacks. Maybe,
Yep.
I try not to send them to my bag if I do have a weapon, but the Vaultec allows me to put the gun in there. And then it's just, a simple code system, or sometimes there's biometric options and it stays locked and secure. So yes, it is multi-step for me to access the firearm, but it's so much better than me not having a tool.
Yeah.
And then I've also resorted to carrying my Byrna in those different situations too, because it is a less lethal form, but it's still a weapon. And in a state park, you're probably also worried about animals or threats from animals, not just other humans. So
Right.
that would help to cause a deterrent too, because it's the pepper ball, the projectile, and it causes the impact, but then it also releases the pepper spray. And so that's been another option for me to carry too. If I'm like deeply concerned about kids getting into the bag, those are a lot harder to operate. Squeezing that trigger, it's a really hard trigger pull, but you can even keep that locked away too in that bag in something. I've seen people who have bags that zip and then they lock the bag, which I feel like that's harder to get into than the Vaultec. But it is sticky and multi-stepped. But if you're trying to be really safe, that's the way I found to work the best. And it's heavy, but I put it in a backpack or a bog bag, like whatever it is I'm carrying. And I just kind of bear with it. I also, with the Byrna, I have had great success. I have a backpack from Vertex. I don't know if you've ever heard of the company, VERTX. So their bags are made with like a panel in the back that has they call it tactigami. It's like origami, but tactically that
does it involve Velcro?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's many different options that you can make to store, like I think it's made for mostly extra magazines and people that are carrying a ton of gear, but I'm able to put an extra magazine for my Byrna and the Byrna in there and zip it up, and nobody knows that there's a back panel. So it stays nice and hidden in there. So if I did have to escape from my bag, it is like, it's not just an open bog bag or something like that.
Sure. Okay. That's great. That's along the lines of what I've kind of been doing, but it's good to have your expertise on it. Thank you.
This is a pioneer type of territory. So
that's so funny because our group is called Pioneers.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, this is not something that a lot of people, there's not much literature on it or research or resources on it. So
no, and even in like my training, like women's courses and all of that, like when I ask these questions, it's like, I feel like it's so like just you're walking into Target and that's it. And that's like the only place that you would be carrying. And it's like, oh gosh, my life is way beyond just a parking lot of a store. So
absolutely. Good question. Good question.
And the men are like, just wear a belt.
Right.
Yeah, of course. With my leggings and my midriff shirt.
In the water.
In the water.
In the water. While carrying
kids are hanging on you.
While carrying children.
Yeah.
There's also a company, oh gosh, um, I'm trying to think of the word. What would be the marsupial? I think it's marsupial gear, I believe,
Oh,
maybe. And they have waterproof fanny packs.
okay. Love
So,
that.
some people were recommending that they used that to like carry their gun, and they would just, have it crossbody if they were to get in the water. I believe it was marsupial.
Yeah.
But I think if you Googled waterproof fanny pack or tactical fanny pack or something, it probably would come up.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amber, do you have time for one more question? I know we're a little past the hour.
Sure.
All right, Jen will be our last question of the night.
Well, so I watched your how to pack out your car for winter time. I loved it. It was so helpful. I'm very much a preparer, or prepper, not prepper, whatever the word is. I don't know.
You're a self-reliant modern day woman.
Cool, yes. But I wanted to, do you have any additional tips for just so we talked a lot about like situational awareness and safety type concerns, but do you have any additional thoughts that you could give us for the preparedness side of stuff that you do?
Like what in particular?
Like what would be, I know what you like to have maybe in your car for thinking things through of what's important to have on hand, but maybe what's something that you like to have in other aspects of life for being prepared for different situations.
So
Or
maybe I can narrow this down to
yeah.
maybe what is your like, if you had a piece of gear that you would not leave home without, is that kind of helping you, Jen?
Yeah, well, other than gun, I know, or like, I know that kind of thing for sure,
Yeah.
but what's something else that you like to maybe have on hand that can prepare you to meet situations well, I guess?
Okay, so I like to have a blade of any kind, no matter what I'm doing. If I'm on a girls' night out, it'll be like a smaller little knife or a multi-tool or something, not even for self-defense, but as a utility tool. I was raised in the part of the country where every man has a knife, right? I was laughing this Sunday at church because my little 4-year-old nephew is walking by me and he has his little knife in his sheath on his pocket. Like, it's just how kids are raised here. You go to a Christmas and somebody can't open a package. There are 17 children 10 and under who are like, I can cut it for you. I got a knife. Like, they're all ready to use the knife they just got for Christmas. So I like to have a blade. When I travel, I kind of have it like a travel bag whittled down where I have travel essentials. And I have fingernail clippers in there. So fingernail clippers are my backup blade because I can get that past any TSA, including the Salt Lake City one, and they don't let anything go past them. But they will let fingernail clippers go past them. And so just the like thinking through utility purpose of I never want any type of binding that I can't undo. It could be as simple as a shoelace stuck in an elevator or an escalator, right? You just want something like utility blade wise. Blade is like one of man's greatest inventions. So having that with me is great. I'm also big on medical gear, like having basic medical gear. And I'm not carrying like a full IFAC individual first aid kit on my person everywhere I go, but I do always have the basics within reach. So I have some sort of bleeding control kit and some sort of tourniquet, maybe be a smaller one. But if it's not in my purse or in my car or in my bag, it's in my car, like close nearby, right? I don't like to not have it. If I have a backpack on or I'm traveling, it's for sure in there.
What kind of tourniquet do you recommend for like maybe not a petite person that's not real, I guess, not super strong?
So all of the combat tourniquets these days are made to go down to about 17 millimeters, which is tiny. They obviously don't use the metric system, but the US customary system. But I like to use either a CAT, which is a combat application tourniquet. That one uses Velcro. So I still have some of those hanging around. But I use the Soft T a lot now. It's just two different companies, but they work similarly. The Soft T just doesn't have the Velcro. So I find that in Louisiana, I can leave it in my car through the heat of the summer and the glue, like for the Velcro part's not going to come undone. It has like a metal housing system on the latch. And so and it's more pliable. Like I can bend it better than I could the cat with the Velcro, so you can fit it in smaller spaces. So those are the two primary ones that I like to carry. And you can use those down, on younger children. If it's a tiny baby, you can always just like clamshell latch your hand around it if you had to, because it's hard to find something that tiny that is going to be a wide enough surface area. I guess what I'm trying to say is it doesn't require much pressure to stop a bleed on an infant, right? Like you could wrap something like fabric really tight around it, and they're so tiny you'll be able to depress those arteries much easier than you would on an older child or a grown up. So those are the two I carry. I also love to I carry in my medical bag in the vehicle, and then like in backpacks, I always have an EpiPen. My son has anaphylactic reaction to certain insects, which is actually unfortunate because he's the most masculine child I've ever met in the entire world. And I was like, of course he would get anaphylaxis, the child that is constantly being stung by things. But building resilience in us all, I guess. So I always have that. And because I have an EpiPen script, even prior to him having anaphylaxis, I had a desire to be prepared in that way. So I even just got my family physician to write a script for it. And I carried an EpiPen before he ever even had reactions. So I always have an EpiPen, not necessarily in my purse, but like in a backpack if I'm going hiking, and then it's always in my car medical bag. And then I also keep Narcan with me just because of the day and age we live in. You can get it over the counter. I would just hate for me to ever be in a group of kids and one of them was exposed to any type of opiate reaction. And so having Narcan helps me to avoid that issue and have something really quick on hand. So those are things I carry. I always have some sort of hand sanitizer or wet wipes. I always have eye drops nearby. Like those are just kind of basic things that I have found or seem to pop up the most. Some sort of anti-chafing powder. Always have that in the car or somewhere nearby, especially if you have outdoorsy kids. Gold Bond or Aquaphor, like something that you can use to cover an abrasion. Basic bandages and ointment. Like I will always have those. And then I always have a dye-free antihistamine, like Benadryl would be like the brand name of it. Dye-free because if children are exposed to something that's causing an allergen in their body, we don't then want to expose them to dye because that could create like an exacerbated reaction. So I always look for the dye-free version of an antihistamine. It just doesn't make sense to me that somebody would be having an allergic reaction and we would give them red dye. Like,
and
They're all so helpful. Thank you so much.
This, ladies, is why as women, we sometimes carry these gigantic purses around that people make fun of because we're always prepared.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight, Amber. I always like to wrap up these calls in terms of how can we support you? Where can we find you? Because as Apogee women, we love to support our community as well.
Well, thank you so much. So I'm most active on Instagram. It's ms.amber.elle. And I love hearing feedback. Like most of everything I've created has been created based on needs for people. And that is my deepest passion, is finding what a need is and being able to break it down and digest it and deliver it in a way that makes more sense and becomes more relevant for people, because people are so busy and I get that. So if that is what I feel like is one of my talents and skills, that's how I love to use it. So let me know there, like DM me or email me and just say, this is real. I'm really struggling with this. Like I'd really love for this to be something that I can grasp and I could do better in my life or I could implement, but I'm having trouble getting from point A to point B. Like, can you help me? And those are what I use as arrows to help redirect me to what is it I need to create next? Or how can I create a program or a resource or anything that will help to solve? So I think that that's the best way you can support me, is let me know how you need support so that I can direct my next actions in a forward-based trajectory for you.
I love it. Well, thanks again for being here tonight. I'm going to keep these ladies on for a little debrief after.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me.